Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, Fearless Females. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have Beth Hatcher on the program. And the thing that I loved most about talking with Beth is just her idea. She said, it's so hard sometimes to strike that balance between making sure that people know that you're doing great things and making it all about you. Like, how do you get that balance between making sure that your accomplishments are celebrated and you show up, but not taking credit for other people's work or not making other people on the team feel diminished, making them feel like a part of the process too? And I find that's just a really hard balance, to make sure that everyone around you gets the credit that they deserve, but you also toot your own horn because nobody else does it. So I really was interested in just chatting about that with Beth and getting her perspective on that. And I would be so interested in hearing what your perspective is as well. So if you have some thoughts, be sure and send them Lorie at fearlessfinancialadvisors.com. Oh, and shout out to our sponsor, Fearless Financial Advisors. And let's get started with Beth. Today we are with Beth Hatcher. She's the principal and CEO of Beth Interactive. And I'm so excited that she's talking with us today. She said she's got a warm day in Chicago, and it's March when we're recording this. So that's super exciting for all of us. Thank you so much for doing this, Beth. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Lorie. It's an honor to be here.
So let's get started with my favorite question, which is, I'm a reader, love books, every kind. What's your favorite book?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have an awful lot of time to read. And maybe another way of saying that is I don't prioritize reading for myself. Between my company and my 6-year-old, 9-year-old daughters, we are very busy. But there are 2 books, I was thinking about this. There are 2 books that I keep coming back to over and over again, and they're both by Malcolm Gladwell, who's a Canadian author and publisher. And the 2 I keep coming back to are David and Goliath and The Tipping Point. And what I love about what Malcolm Gladwell does is he takes data and science, but spins it into storytelling. So referencing facts about, in the case of The Tipping Point, how an idea sparks and tips and becomes viral. And in the case of David and Goliath, it's about how it's the art of battling giants, right? And how advantages can become disadvantages and vice versa. And every time I read those books, it gives me new inspiration and ideas for how to share my own storytelling, how to navigate my own, turning numbers into stories, but also ideas for my business and my life. It always just gives me these nuggets of new opportunities and new ways to think about things that just always keep inspiring me. So you may already have those on your list so far.
I don't think they've been recommended yet. And that's really intriguing, the idea of telling a story, because I work in numbers a lot, and they're, other people don't find them as interesting as I do, I guess. So telling a story, though, that does resonate with people. It kind of does, and it sticks with me longer, too, if I've heard something in a story form. That's so interesting. I'll have to check those out.
Yeah, they're highly recommend them. They're really fun, and they're engaging, too, right? I mean, yes, you work in numbers, we work with numbers, but it is that art and science of how to take and how to tell the right amount of data, but you also know that you can take statistics and kind of manipulate them any which way. So there's a lot of, validating and justification of the numbers as well, which I really appreciate, but using those tidbits of data to tell the bigger story. We do storytelling all the time, but especially younger generations, millennials and Gen X, are really looking for transparency and an understanding of what those numbers mean. Mm-hmm. So I think there's just that really fabulous art and science balance between those 2 pieces. So anyway, you'll have to tell me if you get a chance to read them, what you think.
All right, I will. It's at the bottom of my pile, and my pile is that big. So it may be a little while, but I definitely will get with you as soon as I finish it. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Beth. Tell me about your journey. Where did you get started? How did you get where you're at? What do you do now? Just tell me a little bit about Beth.
So thanks, Lorie. It's a funny journey. I never expected, if you had asked me as my 20-year-old version of myself where I would be, I don't think I would have believed you. I went to Northwestern University and my two majors were French and poetry. I actually studied to be a poet. That was my entire senior year, was training to be a poet. And when I graduated, I thought I was going to go back and get my MFA. I was going to become a writer. And so I was pursuing, do I go into academia? Do I go into publishing? But I knew I needed to get a job. And my first job out of school was at an advertising agency here in Chicago that a woman that I had studied abroad in Paris with worked at. So she helped me get the job. And my first client was a local hospital here in Chicago. And I didn't know anything about healthcare marketing, but spent a year running their account and eventually left that job, worked at another position where I met my husband, taught myself HTML, and then got a job back at that hospital running their website. So from there, I built out HTML expertise, digital marketing expertise, and then leveraged that into running digital marketing for a hospital and sort of like establish this healthcare marketing expertise. And then in 2010, my husband got the opportunity to get a job in Germany. And we both had the bug to go back abroad. We didn't have kids at the time. And I asked my boss, all the work I'm doing is digital. Is there an opportunity for me to do this job from 7 hours away in Germany? And the answer was, well, no, but if you became a vendor, you could. And that's actually how Beth Interactive got started. Frankly, kind of on a whim. I was doing a little bit of side client consulting work. But in 2010, actually 15 years ago, this July, I started Beth Interactive. And the first 3 years were in Germany, literally working from a dining room table with clients back in the US doing healthcare marketing, which then turned into healthcare fundraising. And then as I moved back and started hiring team members, we've grown in terms of our work in healthcare fundraising to be an agency that really specializes in healthcare and other nonprofit fundraising. Our team is now about 20 people, where we have clients across the country. We have team members across the country. I'm able to present on this work across the country. So it's been an incredible and serendipitous journey. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I never thought that I would be running an agency. I really thought I was going to be writing poetry back in the day, but here we are. And it's been an incredibly gratifying, rewarding, and challenging journey. But that's a little bit of my background about how I got here.
Oh, I love that. It's a really interesting journey. You went from poetry to coding HTML. I mean, did you know this was as soon as you got into the marketing area, are you oh, this was my calling. I was never meant to be a poet, or did it take a while and you're still oh, I'm going to go back and get my degree?
It did take a while. I always thought that I would go back and get my MFA, that I owed it to myself to do that. And I struggled for quite a while with having been so creative and thinking that my path was going to be a creative path, but then ultimately learning that running a company, and I find creativity in new ways now. I find creativity in building a campaign to raise money for our clients, or creativity in approaching a conference and figuring out who am I going to meet with and what are we going to be talking about. I find creativity in the problem solving of really unique challenges that we haven't necessarily encountered before. So I'm sorry if I'm not answering the question specifically, but yes, the change from that creativity to HTML, but I'm glad that I learned the fundamentals of marketing and fundraising, right? I learned the skills of how to build emails and code websites, because that gave me that basis and understanding to grow deeper into the craft and then start to lift higher up into the craft and an understanding of how all the pieces fit towards the whole. So I think that's made me a stronger leader and a stronger manager.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll find that if you know how they build on each other, you have a better idea of how the whole thing works. And I like that idea. I think it's interesting what you were saying just about having creativity, because I find that even in finance, I need that creative outlet or that creative side of me that likes just a little bit of pink, but likes doing a little bit of something fun and isn't complete spreadsheets. Like sometimes you'll see my spreadsheets are jazzed up or something. They've got a little bit of color in them. But that idea that we're more than just one thing, that we're more than just, one piece of our career, but we need a lot of different things to kind of make us whole and fulfill us, right?
Yeah, I love that. And I think too, I always thought that you could either be of a strategic mind or an operationally focused mind, right? You either like the big picture or you like to do the logistics. And I feel like I started my career in that logistics, task project management, boop, 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 you get it done. But I can do both now, which I find actually really rejuvenating, and understanding how both sides of the equation works. I think it makes me stronger at both of those occasions. But I think you're absolutely right, knowing that you can't just look at a ton of numbers and expect people to see the same things that you see. There is that kind of art and creativity that comes into, frankly, communicating and expressing yourself. And kind of sidebarring back to your question of, did I think I was going to be a poet? Like, what did I think I was going to do with a French degree, right? And I've spoken French since I was 13, and I love it. It's a huge, passionate part of my life. My kids go to a French immersion school, so we have this French part of our culture. But honestly, knowing how to speak a second, and then when we were in Germany, a third language, you can't communicate the way you want to communicate to anyone. You can't make jokes at first. You can't express yourself. And so what I learned actually through speaking those other languages is how to communicate simply to get your point across, and how to translate experiences for different audiences. If somebody isn't really picking up what you're putting down, you take a step back, you try a different angle, and you try to make those connections with them. So anyway, just some of those lived experiences that are bizarre parts of my past that really have become applicable parts of how I run my day to day.
Yeah, I love that idea that you can take those pieces as simple as trying to speak another language or communicate in another language and work them into your business and your life and see the connections there. I think that's so great. So tell me, Beth, is there an investment that you've made along this journey in yourself that you were like, oh my goodness, I am so glad I did that, because I wouldn't be who I am today without that?
That is a really challenging question. I'm not quite sure why. I think one of the biggest investments, our company had a couple of really critical kind of turning points. But this is not about a company. This is about me. I think when I learned to trust my own expertise, when I learned to trust myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's being a woman or being young. I started the company at 27. I started my career at 21. I was young. I looked young. And I didn't have a lot of experience, and you learn not to trust yourself pretty quickly, right? And I think over the years, especially, 10 years, 15 years into this career, it's like when those things start to click together, where when the things you're thinking about start to be what you're reading that other folks are putting out into the industry, and then you start to have those conversations with people and they're like, that's what I was thinking about, or that's what I need. When you start to feel that you're like reading the tea leaves a little bit, or seeing between the lines and seeing what kind of the universe is telling you, I realize that I have that. I have that in myself. I have this experience and the expertise. I've encountered a lot of challenges, work-wise and personally. I've come through them. And so I have that trust in myself now that I can do it. And I built a team that I believe in that can do it. And so that just kind of is sort of it's not an aha moment, but it's sort of a slow burn a little bit, where I became slowly more and more confident in my expertise and what I can bring to the world and what I can bring to this space. But learning to trust that in myself, I feel like was a big accomplishment. It's hard to do sometimes, I think, as a woman, especially as a mom, when you're facing all the challenges of what you should and shouldn't be doing. I feel like it's just kind of a no-win situation. So kind of honing into my heart a little bit and kind of into my core, that really that's made a big difference for me.
Yeah. And you're right. There's a lot of, you hear the word like imposter syndrome a lot, and you're like, do I really know? And a lot of times we get like 20 different credentials. I know that's my route. I got like 20 different credentials behind my name. So I'm like, see, I do know what I'm talking about.
And I never did. I have a bachelor's and half the people on my team have a master's or a PhD, so there's some of that too. Yeah. And I really am self-taught in the work that I'm doing. So there's some of that as well. Like, had I gone the more traditional educational path, would I be in a different position? But I'm not sure what your experience here would be, Lorie, but I feel like learning by doing has been such an important part of my career and my life, and how we train our team as well is, hey, if you're smart and you're talented and you're asking the right questions, you can do anything. You don't have to have, at least in my case, all the credentials after your name, even though it's not a bad idea.
Right? Yeah. Well, so as you learn by doing and you kind of get that, how did you translate that learning into confidence? Like, that's the piece that I'm interested in, because you go from, young, you don't know anything. You really don't a lot of times when you're young, but you slowly are building that. And so you can see your skills building, but how do you translate that into confidence?
Great question. Yeah. I think time and experience. The first time you try something, you're figuring it out, you fail, and failing is hard, but failing is okay. That's a challenge for me personally. I don't like to fail. I mean, who does, right? But I think the more you do it, every time you do it again, you get stronger. And then it turns a little bit different. And then you leverage that expertise that you've had. This looks a little different, but this part is similar. So I can get it this far, along the way. And again, I think as you do it over and over again, the first time a client said no was really hard, and it's become easier. The first time I had to say no to a client was really hard, and then that became easier. So I think it's just that kind of repetition of learned and shared experiences to keep that moving forward, and also leveraging your village, leveraging your community, whether that is the people you're learning from, the people you are teaching, your peers, your colleagues, or finding a mentor or a coach in a different place. Like, asking those questions and absorbing that information. I think the more conversations I have with people, the more I understand where my knowledge starts and ends and where theirs begins. And I think understanding, and also, over the years, I thought we started as a generalist and we've become more of a specialist, right? I'm not sure if that's been your experience. But once you realize you're not trying to be everything to everyone, you're trying to do the best you can in your space, and feeling confident to say, you know what, I don't have the answer for that, but let me introduce you to somebody who does. I think that for me has been a next step of confidence, is acknowledging when I just fundamentally don't have the skills to solve that particular problem, but I have this great community and network of folks who are intelligent and who can take that to the next level.
Yeah, I love that idea, and the idea of leveraging your network, your tribe, the people around you, that helps them too, right? As you have them do what they're best at, everybody wins, right?
Exactly.
So, Beth, what is the worst advice someone gave you? Have you ever gotten like really bad advice, and did you take it? Did you not take it? Did you learn from it?
So two things come to mind. One's a short story, one's maybe a little bit longer one if we have time for both. The first advice is actually when I was graduating from college as a poet. I was talking with my poetry professor, and I said, what should I be doing? And she said, Beth, 9-to-5 jobs are not made for people like you and me. And that really gave me pause, because my instinct said, you know what, I actually do okay in a 9-to-5 job. And the reason why is, I've always tried to find the passion in everything I do. My first job out of school was temporary. I moved home to Wisconsin, and I worked in a bank doing quality control and quality assurance for like home equity mortgages. I still frankly don't even understand what I was doing, but it was routine. It was rhythmic. It was not particularly exciting, but I found ways to be efficient and fast. And I had to lift these 40-pound boxes, so I got really strong, but I found a way to make lemonade out of lemons, right? And so in that bad advice of 9-to-5 job isn't for you, I found that like I actually can thrive in any kinds of those circumstances if you can make the best out of it and learn something and then leverage that to what happens next. So that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me. The other, I would say maybe not worst advice, but damaging feedback I received early in my career, which I wonder if it's particularly relevant for women or not. But in that first job I had out of school, it was a very competitive and it was an intense environment. The people we were working together, we were supposed to be teammates, but we were kind of pitted against each other for who's doing best, who's doing fastest. And so to try to take ownership over my work, I would share with my supervisor, like, oh, I worked on this project, I did this thing, et cetera. And I wasn't throwing people under the bus, but I was trying to take credit and accountability for the work I was doing. And so the feedback I received is, Beth, you're not a good team player. And I think it was that concept that I was trying to like fend for myself in a really cutthroat environment. And I took that to the nth degree, where I kind of became a shadow of myself in the workplace. I didn't take credit for any work I did. I always lifted up my colleagues, and I really kind of damaged the work that I did, made me take a step back, because I'm not sure if I was resentful necessarily of it, but I felt like I had to take second tier and lift everybody up around me in order to make them look good. But it was at a detriment to myself and my skills and my expertise. And that took almost a decade to undo. Mm-hmm. And honestly, now it's hard to talk about myself and what I do, because I'm always lifting up the team. I'm lifting up the great work. I'm grateful the incredible opportunities that I have, but trying to be a team player doesn't necessarily mean forgetting about yourself as a part of that team. Mm-hmm. And I think it takes humility and grace and just delicacy to lift yourself up, but while you're also lifting up other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's a really hard skill to learn, and something that's difficult to walk, because I do understand. You're trying to lift the team around you. You're trying to be a good team player. You're trying to make sure, but on the other hand, you don't want to forget that you've had value here. That you have been doing the work, you have been showing up, and you do a good job at what you do. And sometimes you have to be a little bit bold. You need to stand up and say, hey, I'm doing a good job here. I did this. And that is a really hard line to work, to walk, especially, I think, especially as a woman, but
it is. And I think some of that it's the external and internal validation. Right. So, we all, I'll admit it. I want external validation. I want to hear that I did a good job on something. And even if you know it internally, I think there is that balance of it. I think millennials, of which I am a millennial, are kind of said that all millennials want external feedback and praise, which, I think at its face value is true, but we all want to know value. I think that's a beautiful word that you said. And I diminished my own value in trying to lift everyone up around me. Frankly, just to kind of play ball with what the culture was. And it was not a good culture, right? So we admit that. But then taking that into other circumstances, it is that difficult balance of lifting up your team around you. This is not a me against them. It's us all together. But I also think it takes strong leaders to recognize each of those individual roles, but also how everyone works together, collaborates, partners, makes each other the best versions of themselves. But that comes with also understanding your value as the part of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And I'd like to get better at it. It would be so interesting to see a really good example of someone who can both lift the team and make themselves, an important contributing member, or show their value and their worth. Because I do think a lot of times, as I've watched my team, I do think a lot of times you don't stand up for yourself enough and say, hey, we did a great job, but I also did a great job. And that's a really hard line. I'm going to have to think on that, because that is a hard line to walk, isn't it?
It is. I think it's something that, quite possibly everyone struggles with. I'm not sure if it's necessarily a female thing, but I do think there's especially as a mom, which I'm very blessed to be a mom, just that self-sacrificial perspective. You should take care of your kids over yourself. You should want to, and that's a struggle that I had is, you should want to be at home with your kids. I love my children. I love them so dearly, but I don't want to be at home with them all the time. I love my job. And it makes me a better person. It makes me a better mom to be passionate about the work I'm doing. And, I hope that example I'm showing for them of loving, caring, and being passionate about your workplace, while also being able to be there for your family. That's a balance in and of itself. But I think there's just there is that double-edged sword of you should be all things to all people. You should have all the self-care in the world and also be there for your family and be there as a partner and be there for your work and like be accessible all the time. And don't forget to text and email and pick up the phone and do FaceTime. Like, oh my God, how do we even get through the day? But
Yeah.
I'm getting distracted. I'm sorry.
I just watched that Barbie movie quote again today, and it just struck me the same as it does every time I watch it, where you have to be all things to all people and still show up for yourself and yet never, put yourself above other. It really is it just sort of encapsulates all the things that we're like, how do you do all that? How do you do all that? Yeah, I don't know. So I guess we're learning together, and we can help and support other women along the journey, and be an example. I actually did read some research recently that said that young children with working moms and successful working moms have a more successful career because they've seen the way that an example of a successful working mother. So that's what I'm clinging to.
I love that. We'll cling to it together.
Sounds great. What about a situation that you could go back and if you knew the same things, you'd do it the same way. But what if you could take back all the knowledge that you have now and go back to a situation where you're like, "Ooh, I would do that differently."
That is a memory that still makes me cringe, frankly. It was earlier on in my career in the Beth Interactive history. We just moved back from Germany, and I had the opportunity to work with a very random, not typical industry for me to build a really innovative and creative website, which is not something we do anymore, but it was something that we were doing quite a bit at the time. And I sat down with the two heads of this multi-million or billion-dollar company and just felt completely out of place. I'm too young, I'm not inexperienced, I don't really have what it takes, but I heard their vision, and my answer back was, I haven't done it before, so I can't do it. And that sticks with me. Mm-hmm. And it has stuck with me because that wasn't true at the time. I could have done it if I had applied my mind to it. And interestingly, a year later, I got almost exact the same project and knocked it out of the park. But I had this perspective in my mind that I haven't done it, so I can't do it. And I actually referred them to somebody else. And I said, I'm so sorry to waste your time. Here's somebody else who I think is up for the task. And I think that kind of comes back to the themes that we've talked about already, trusting yourself and realizing that, it's not a fake it until you make it situation. I would never bluster in front of a client to say I could do something that I truly don't believe I'm capable of. And that's where we have that partnership and network of other folks who do. But if you have the raw skills, that's that stretch zone, right? Like that's the challenging place where you can grow, not just relying on all the projects you've done in the past, but saying, I have that lived experience, but here's this next step for me. And I'm typically honest to say, I haven't done this exact thing, but here's the approach that I would take. And that was just a really big learning opportunity for me to realize that I have the skills, even at that young age, I have the skills to do these projects and also to trust myself when I don't. But through that's also part of the way that we've grown our team is hiring really smart, intelligent, ambitious people who have that raw skill and talent and desire to do more, even if they haven't done that exact thing. It's great when all those stars align, but I think taking that learning opportunity of I can, so I will, has really driven me moving forward.
I haven't done it yet, but I bet
exactly.
But I've got the skill set to do it.
Yes.
Yeah. What about if you could go back, Beth, and talk to yourself at the beginning of your journey, in 18, 19, 20, 21, somewhere around there? What would you tell her?
I would tell her, and this is kind of funny, like take a job, any job. I felt coming out of school that I had to find the perfect opportunity, right? That allowed me to pursue my passions and was a great work environment and all those things, which we all hope and aspire to. But it's really hard to find, especially coming right out of school or right out of, whatever your career circumstances are. And I found that as I kind of skipped along the way, like jumped on different stepping stones in my career, every time I did something that wasn't where I was going to permanently be, I picked up new things. I picked up new skills, experiences, networks. And frankly, every position I've ever had was because I knew someone. And I think that is unfortunately really challenging for folks entering the workplace is to find that network. But I think, I never would have expected to be where I am now at 20. But to tell her, follow your path, take those opportunities, but stay curious, right? Stay curious, ask questions, get the most you can out of each of those experiences, because that's going to lead you into the next one. And I think that can be really challenging for young people, especially when there's this pedestal of what we all want our future career to be. But it took me a long time to get here to this place. I think it takes us all a long time to get to the places where we feel confident. I have friends that hit their forever career at 40 or 43. So it takes a while to get there, but you pick up those experiences and that knowledge along the way. And I think that level of learning by doing, again, is invaluable and cannot be overstated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that like every single job gave you a piece of who you became, right?
It did.
And so like even those jobs that you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do this for one more minute, one more hour. I had those going through college and starting out in the workforce and stuff like that. But even those, I think they teach you a little bit of something. And so glean it, like take the opportunity. I love how we're talking about just like you had a job that wasn't that intellectually inspiring, but you found, ways to make it fun and interesting. And you gleaned what you could out of every experience. It's kind of like living life to the fullest, right?
I tried at the very least. I probably complained a lot along the way, but in retrospect, it's probably a little bit rosier. But you're exactly right. You pick up the pieces of who you are as you move along, whether it's what you thought you were going to be, or who you thought you were going to be, or realizing who you're not. Mm-hmm. You only have that experience by trying.
What scared you the most when you started out on your journey, and does it still scare you or not really?
I think what scared me when I began my journey was being too young and that imposter syndrome that we talked about. That was challenging, and that's come with time, right? It's hard to feel like you belong sometimes in a space where we're all supposed to make ourselves look really intelligent, and being humble and honest about your skills and your expertise can be really challenging. And I think relies on internal confidence, but also trust and safety of the community that you're with. And I feel really, really honored to be part of a team, both my current immediate team, but also our clients, where we can have those kind of honest conversations about, this didn't go exactly the way I wanted, and here's the reason why, but here's what I'm going to do to make it better. Anyway, yes, being fear of failure always is challenging, and that's tough to overcome. But again, I think that comes with time and experience, and just trusting yourself and trusting the team that's around you, that they'll get you through it and lift you up through it.
Do you ever get not scared of failing?
Oh, I haven't yet. I haven't yet. I know. Gosh, it's so hard. My husband always tells me, like, some things are going to fail as we get bigger, as things get more complex. I work far more than I should to begin with. I mean, it's just who I am. But I do love the challenges that I have. But also being a perfectionist makes it really challenging to let things fail. But also, how will everyone else learn if there aren't some of those things that they get that opportunity to find how to pick things up and move forward and find that creative solution? So if I ever figure out how to not be scared of failure, Lorie, you will be the first person.
Okay, that's perfect. Call me the day you figure it out. I would love to know.
You got it. Oh my gosh.
What about any unique challenges because you're a woman throughout your career journey, Beth?
Gosh, I feel very privileged to say I don't feel like I feel very privileged to say that I don't feel like I've faced any encounters as a woman. There's been, a little bit here and there, but nothing substantial. I think for me, choosing to be a mom and navigating that balance, as we talked about a little bit, has been challenging, because as a woman, you're supposed to want to work and want to be home, and you're shamed if you work too much, and you're shamed if you're at home too much. And, there's no winning there. That's a delicate balance that I still struggle with. Mm-hmm. I'm very, very lucky to have an incredible husband and partner who supports me every step of the way. And my kids are very understanding. Actually, my older daughter regularly gives me business advice. She asks me, Mom, what are the bumps? She calls them the bumps. What are the bumps that you have? And she likes to problem solve with me. And it gives me a chance to talk about the basics of entrepreneurship and being a leader. So, that's just has been a funny way that the two worlds have collided a little bit. So I feel very lucky, and I'm confident that there's a lot of women out there that haven't been as lucky as I have in those places. And I've also had some really incredible female mentors and coaches along the way that have stepped up and supported me and being confident in myself in those ways.
I like that. I like that you found women along your journey that have been helpful and lifted and grown. And, that's the reason I do the podcast, is to give that sense of mentorship, or that sense of we're here to help and we'd love to help. So I love that you were lucky to have those. Some of my guests haven't been, others have been. And I love when those women along their journey help out with just even support or a cup of coffee or something like that when you're having a low day, right?
Absolutely. And it can be competitive too. I mean, in my earlier career, I saw women who, when they made it to the top, try to prevent other women from rising. And that's tough to watch. That's tough to watch. And I think, also it's more than just women. I know this is the Fearless Females podcast, so I'm all for that, but I think it's also helping everyone where there's the opportunity to support all people and getting where they can be the best versions of themselves.
I agree. I've got 3 sons of my own, so I definitely get that.
Oh my gosh.
What about, Beth, what are you the most proud of?
Ooh, it's a tough one to put into words. I am incredibly proud of the business I've built and the people that have come with me along the way, and the way that we are building this niche industry of digitally driven healthcare philanthropy. I'm not the only shop in town that does it, but I think the way that we do it in a way that focuses on deep care and passion and partnership for the clients we work with and the team around me. I mean, there is so much love in the work that we pour into it and the projects that we're able to share. And I think, consultants get such a bad rap, but because there's this understanding that it's all about the money. It's all about, just getting the job done. And that is not the love that we put into it. And I say love, I mean love. We put love into it. And to have built an agency over 15 years with a growing and very strong reputation, the opportunity to build new things and solve new problems that are so clearly needed by the people we work with, it's more than gratifying. It's just incredibly rewarding. And I think, are you familiar with the term ikigai? It's a Japanese term, a reason for living or a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So ikigai is the center of 4 pieces, right? It's what the world needs, what you love, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. And the center of all 4 of those things is ikigai. And I kind of think I might have gotten close to that. I do feel like what I love and am passionate about is, in fact, where I can make a career and what the world needs. And to find the center that I feel like I'm there and have come there and I've worked my way to get there. Oh my God, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really inspirational. And it feels right, that when you find your center, that it's not only what you love doing. And I love that you talk about putting love into your work, because I think that you can't find that ikigai, that center, unless you truly do love your work. Like, you love what you do. And that doesn't mean every day.
I was just going to say, there are so many challenges, Lorie,
Yeah.
Being an entrepreneur, balancing all these things, just the day-to-day is really challenging, but it does feel, and I have this conversation with my husband a lot, like, I do love what I do. I love it. And that does drive me. It drives me and it keeps me happy. And if there's ever that point at which I don't love it, then we'll make some changes. But it's pretty remarkable to be able to say that.
Any advice for a young lady who's just starting down this path that you're already successful at? Any advice to help her succeed like you?
I think, I said it earlier, but I think be curious, stay curious, look for opportunities to learn, to grow yourself, to meet new people. I learned along the way that if you're meeting with somebody doing that like informational interview, don't just ask that person, but ask them, who else do you think that I could speak with? Who else do you think would be a good person for me to connect with? But I think just staying curious, asking questions, and being open to sort of that world and that path where the world is going to take you, where your path goes. Again, I never thought I would be where I am today, but I seized every opportunity that I could to the best of my skills, right? Like we're not always able to take everything on, but by asking those questions, being open and curious to following that path, that's what got me here. And that's what I think helped me find that thing that I love the most, even if it comes about in unexpected ways.
I love that. I love that thought. I have just really appreciated listening to your journey and listening to your story. And I've gotten a lot of thinking points out of it too, where I'm like, oh, I need to delve deeper into that. But thank you so much, Beth, for sharing and being here with us. If I have a listener that wants to connect with you and ask questions or something like that, how does she get a hold of you?
Well, I would love to connect with anybody who has questions or if I might be able to support in any way. I'm on LinkedIn as Beth Hatcher, and folks can email me at beth@bethinteractive.com if they'd like to reach out or learn more.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing this for us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Lorie. This was wonderful. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.